I'm going to go ahead and show everyone how we place an IV catheter in our class. I'm going to go over the taping process as well as the placement. So I've got my supplies here. I've got a T-port with a syringe of flush attached. I have a male adapter, which you will need at the end. I have my IV catheter itself, and then I have 5 pieces of tape. So I've got 3 regular sized pieces, and then I have 2 pieces where I've basically ripped it in half, so I have 2 skinny pieces. Now at this point, we would prepare the patient. We would shave all the way around the leg, very nice square for us to work with. Then we would scrub the area, alternating chlorhexidine scrub with either sterile saline or alcohol solution. At this point, I would introduce my catheter once my patient is all prepped. Bevel up, and you always want to make sure you're following the actual vein itself. So if the vein is traveling in kind of a sideways direction, make sure you're introducing the catheter in that same direction as well. It'll just make your life a little easier. So bevel up, I actually like to loosen my cap a little bit on the end. I find that it gives me that flashback a little bit easier. And I go at a 45-degree angle parallel to the vein here. So usually at this point, you can feel kind of a pop when that happens, and I would normally have some blood flashback here if I'm in the vein. At this point, I would walk the catheter off the stylet. Normally it advances much easier, but so you do not push the stylet with the catheter. You only want to push the catheter in. At this point, what I do is I place my thumb over the vessel and I occlude it before I remove my stylet. And the reason why I do that is so that blood is not coming out of here and getting the area bloody. So at that point, I've got my cap and my catheter, and I place my thumb on the end. I never take my thumb off. I've seen catheters push themselves out, so I always leave my thumb on here when I'm first taping. At this point, I'm going to take one of the skinny pieces of tape, and it is going to go sticky side up underneath the catheter. You can lift your catheter up a little bit to help you with placement of this tape. You do not want to cover the insertion point of the catheter or the little flanges on the end of the catheter hub here. So I only leave a little bit, and then I fold that over so it's around the catheter itself. And then I fold that back on over and then wrap it all the way around the leg. I always put tabs at the end of my tape. I call them happy tabs. Other people call them friendship tabs. Either way, they make people happy. At this point, I'm going to take one of the larger pieces of tape, and you can rip a piece in the side. That is for easier access, but it's not necessarily required. So if you like to do it, great. If not, that's no problem. I will walk this underneath all the way to the base of the tape that I already have, place it on either side so it's overlapping. This is sticky side down. And then when I bring it back on over, usually it's long enough, you can cover the actual insertion of the catheter at this point. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to take my T-port. This usually has flush in it. I make sure that the T-port is nice and flushed. I place my thumb over the vessel and remove the cap from the actual catheter itself. And then I take the end of my T-port here and I place it in the catheter. At this point, I flush and make sure that I'm still in the vein. I can pull back, and there on a patient, blood would actually come back as well. But this is so that you can make sure you're in the vessel before you continue your tape job. Otherwise, if you're not, you're going to have to take all of the tape off, and that's not what we want. At this point, I'm going to take the other skinny piece of tape I have. I'm going to place it sticky side up. The first place I'm going to put it is going to be right around the main injection point. The arm has to go over the T-port, or the T-port arm has to have the tape go over it so that it'll lock it down so that T-port won't come out of the catheter. So one arm goes over, and then one arm wraps around, or one arm of the tape goes around. And at this point, you have now locked down your T-port into your catheter. Next up is another piece of tape that we have not ripped. Make sure you put your tabs in for everyone. Now this is for aseptic technique. I have you all put the tape underneath the injection port. And then sticky side down, you can just wrap it around. The reason I do that is so when I am actually going to inject anything in here, I've got a little bit of protection from any fur or skin that may be showing. Lastly, I have this piece of tape. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce my male adapter, which actually fell into the sink. Can you give me another male adapter? See what I mean by editing? Mm-hmm. I was hoping it would be perfect all the way through, but... Oh. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, you are going to take your male adapter. It's best to clamp off the T-port so that there's no fluid flowing when you undo the syringe. I usually like to flush one more time, make sure everything's still in place. Then I will take off my syringe and place my male adapter. Very last piece of tape, sticky side up. I place it right where the wings of the T-port are and then fold it over so that it is nice and snug. At this point, I like to curl my T-port over and place it right next to the other injection port and then just wrap everything around. When you're wrapping this portion, you want to make sure that you don't put your clamp in with your tape. That's something I've seen before. And then you've got your IV catheter.